I would like to call the January 18th meeting of the County Board to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. A moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Everybody check in, please. Yeah. I believe there's two absent. Yeah. But by visual, there's two missing, and we were informed ahead of time, but we do have a quorum. Item 4 is approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Questions? Okay, then we will call the vote. Approve the agenda. Lisa?
Yeah.
Yep, the agenda is approved. Item 5, members of the public wishing to be heard. All members who wish to speak will have up to 5 minutes to speak. And again, no questions or interactions, but they're allowed 5 minutes to speak. Reading. I have Luke. Sorry, I can't read the last name.
That's all right.
Okay. But if you'd like to speak, you can have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were gonna review a couple things before I spoke. You guys are really putting me on the spot here.
Well, it's the first thing we do, sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah, so I guess my name is Luke Deutschlander. I just have a couple concerns, I guess, with the project. A little about me quick, and I only got 5 minutes. I grew up in Chippewa Falls. Didn't come for money or anything, so I do believe in second chances. You know, I think everybody here has made a mistake or two in their life, so I always believe in that. A couple concerns I've got is just community safety. I know the pitch on this whole project has been geared around helping the elderly. I'm pretty active in the Chippewa Falls community. I know a large amount of elderly people that live near the project. Most of them, when they were made aware of it, said that the meeting was actually too sudden for them to come here tonight and actually talk and voice their opinion. Most of the elderly people in the neighborhood, one being Robert Kenny, who's a war vet, he lives right behind the motel, not thrilled about the project, doesn't want to see that kind of activity go on over there. And what I mean by that is other projects that I've seen that have been developed that are, I guess, pitched as elderly or low-income housing, it seems to be that most of that becomes subsidized housing, which becomes low-income housing, and then, you know, there's community concern for sex offenders, habitual criminal offenders, and, you know, the homeless population. And again, I believe in second chances, right? We all do. But every single citizen in the city and the outskirts of Chippewa was pretty shaken when the whole Lily Peters thing happened, rest in peace. And bringing this kind of project in, and people that potentially may have that kind of background, I don't think that the Indian Head Motel, being half a mile from a school, is the kind of place for this project, especially when there's other motels and development sites in Chippewa County that be utilized for a similar program, such as the motel in Tilden. If anybody's aware of that, similar motel, it's got acreage, it's outside of the town, right off Highway 53. I just think the Indian Motel is just very close to home for a lot of us. And I guess on the side note, I know a lot of the real estate developers in Eau Claire. I know what happened with the Sojourner House project and all the problems they've had down by their buildings in the community. And I just personally think there's a big concern for community safety here that isn't being pitched and is not being talked about. I'm talking about the side of things where nobody's going to come up in front of a presentation, in front of a board, and tell you the nasty side of what can happen when these kind of things come into our community. The other concern that I have is just the fact that the pitch is free money, it's a grant. Anytime somebody says free money or that it's a grant, just in my experience, that money always comes from somewhere. And I'm a little bit shaken up about this, so I'm trying to keep as cool as I can here. Also, I'm the first one to speak. But the financial concern for me is, and again, growing up in Chippewa Falls and living in Chippewa Falls, is the fact that when you give a grant, whether it's from state or county funding, typically these kind of buildings are nonprofits, and nonprofits typically defer their taxes on real estate. What that means is if I were right now to have 4 quarters in my hand and I pass it around to each one of you guys, and then on the 5th turn, I ask you guys to give me another one, but I dropped out in the beginning, where are you guys gonna get that from? So when we take a property parcel off the tax map in Chippewa County, which this building pays around $13,000 a year currently, and that could go up. That's not going to happen because you're gonna have deferred taxes on the building. And what's gonna happen to the houses around there? Well, they're gonna have to make up for that. So as far as free money, it may be free at face value, but there's always gonna be a trickle-down effect. There's no such thing as free money. That's a pitch. So that's concerning. The other concern is, as far as being in the project itself, the fact that the majority of the money is coming from a grant, where's the skin in the game? Where's the emotion in the game? Where's the, hey, if it fails, you know, whose back is it gonna fall on? That's another concern. I think that just with the community safety and the fact that the finances are, from what I read, and again, I don't have all the notes and the presentation and stuff and maybe some of the fine details, to me, it looks like 100% of this funding in this project relies on financing coming from the state. And again, that has a trickle-down effect from all the research I've done and just projects I've known about in Eau Claire with similar developments and similar stuff. The other thing that really kind of irks me is the fact that the couple seniors that I do know near the development, they said they seen it in the paper, but by the time they seen the time and the date on the board, they had plans with family or they were out of town, and they weren't even able to have the time to gather to come here and talk about their feelings and their opinions, and they live in the affected area. And the fact that there's a school a half mile away from this development project. So that being said, those are my concerns for community safety, finances, just overall generalization of the project.
Thank you. Next, we have Audie Steadman.
Good to go?
Yep.
My name is Audie Stedman. I grew up in Chippewa Falls. I've lived here for about 20 years now. I don't have any notes on hand. It was very short notice that I'd come here, but I definitely agree with Luke and a lot of the things that he said. The project is going to be within a half mile of Southfield Elementary School, and he covered a lot of points that I agree with. I'm all for second chances as well, but I think this is very close to home. And then paying for the grants, that comes from our pockets. Like Luke had said, Tim Stoffel, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Where does the money come from? Sorry, this is very last minute. I didn't have notes in front of me. I just heard about this, and I wanted to come voice my opinion. But Luke made a very good argument. That's all I have.
Thank you. Seeing no more members of the public to be heard, we're going to move on to item 6, the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. So we have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. Are there any questions? Any discussion? Any of the items?
Supervisor
Yes.
Meek has numerous questions.
Okay.
What I heard the last time this was on front of the board was this was going to be housing for families. And this isn't appropriate?
So
Yes,
right now, we're approving the consent agenda.
Yes, I withdraw it.
Is the few items here to,
sir.
that are listed.
Sorry for that.
Okay, that's fine. We're good. Okay. Any further questions or comments then on the consent agenda? Okay, now call the vote then. to approve the consent agenda? Okay. Okay, the consent agenda is approved. Item 7 are reports. Move on, general reports. We got the demographic analysis for Chippewa County.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Randy Schultz. I'm the County Administrator. I'm here to introduce Dale Knapp from Forward Analytics, who will come up and give a presentation, but I just wanted to give a little background on this. Dale gave a presentation at the WCA conference this last year. Several of the members were there. I told one of the members, he asked, we kind of talk about what groups we're going to, what we're going to see, and we talked about this one. I said, it's going to be very good. Dale does an excellent job, but it's going to be a little depressing. And he came up afterwards and said, I agree with you. Just kind of further background, in 2011, I believe it was 2011, 2012, when I became the administrative coordinator in Lincoln County, I went to my first or second WCA conference, and they had the exact same topic there on that agenda. And I went to it and I listened to it, and they basically told us exactly where we are today. They told us that 10, 11 years ago. And I always kept that in the back of my mind because I knew around 2025 I was going to retire. And I was like, are they going to be right or not? And unfortunately, I think they were. So Dale, if you could come up and give your presentation.
Thank you, Randy. It's good to be here. So my background is in economics and public policy. I worked for the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance for 18 years before coming to the Counties Association in 2018. And to sort of take Randy's comments just sort of one step back, when we talk about demographics, in 2004, we did a study at the Taxpayers Alliance on population projections and looked at, we called it Wisconsin 2015. And in that 2004, we said that this is statewide. After 2015, the workforce was going to begin to flatten and start to turn downward. We're going to see labor shortages throughout the state. And we talked about a lot of other things, but the demographics are very easy to project because we all age. Wisconsinites don't move nearly as much as other places. So it's fairly easy to project out. And the reason that we did it at that time was when you look out and you see trouble ahead, it's better to start early dealing with it. Instead, we're at a position statewide where the demographics do not look very good. It's going to be harder to overcome that. I will say Chippewa County in many ways looks a little bit better. And I loved when I walked in, I love that quote on the wall. The future is seldom the same as the past. That's so true. It's more true today than I think ever. We've got so much in terms of demographic changes and changes going on that the future is going to be extraordinarily different. So really what's happening, we've written a lot of studies on big topics for the state. What's driving many of them is demographics. We did a study on housing. There's demographic changes that are behind that. We did one on childcare, deals with demographics and the demographic changes. We just did one recently on senior care. The need in terms of senior care that we're seeing coming is being driven by demographics. And so it's really, really important. And so what's driving change both statewide and in Chippewa County, baby boomers like Randy, I'm turning 65 very shortly. Since 2010, beginning to age past 65 and leaving the workforce. A huge population. Declining births. Since 2007, statewide, we've had declining births in every year but two. Statewide,
the number of births in 2023 was the lowest since 1942. Think about the population difference between 1942 and today, and we're back at that same number of births. Statewide, net migration is not improving, and that's a big problem. Chippewa County, we are seeing some improvements, so you're doing much better there. And what we're going to see is, because of those first two, over the next 15 years, some of the fastest, I would say, demographic changes that I can think of. So I did put, there's a lot on this chart. I want you to focus really on the bottom. I wanted you to see the numbers in terms of raw numbers, but the bottom part of the chart really tells the story. And so I broke this into key age group. What's been going on between 2010 and 20, and then 2020 to 23. Those are numbers that we know. And then based on the 2020 to 23 change, we can project out to some degree, with some degree of certainty, unless things change dramatically, what this decade is going to look like. So let's start with that under 15 population. It's not been talked about much. We've talked about declining births, and we'll get to that in a second. But that population is so important. As an economist, one of the things we say is, and this may seem a little harsh to some, but it's the children of today are the workforce of tomorrow. And what we mean by that is the number of children today really correlates very highly with your workforce 20 years, 30 years, and 40 years out. So what we saw in Chippewa County, a very small decline over the last decade, done better than many counties. The challenge is you're on pace to lose about, that population to decline about 1,500 over this decade. That's what that declining birth, those continued declining births are doing. What that tells me is, looking out again 20 to 30 years, at a minimum, you're going to start seeing, declines of in that range, 1,500 or more in certain segments of your workforce. 15 to 24 population gains in both time periods. That's a positive. 25 to 44, that's the other really key demographic. That's where that's your prime workforce. That's the ages that people are working full-time generally. There's some part-time in there, but generally when we talk about workforce, we're talking about our labor force. We're talking about age 16 on up. So that potential labor force includes young people that are still in school, and it includes the people 65 and older, many of whom are retired. So that key demographic there is the 25 to 64. And the county has done very well over the last decade. In Wisconsin, it was a very small change. So again, Chippewa County has done better. The challenge is, again, looking forward, because the last half of this decade is when you're going to really start to see the bulk of the change, because I'm near the end of the baby boom. You're talking about some of the biggest parts of the baby boom as those people retire and leave the workforce. But you're looking at roughly, by the end of the decade, about 2,300 fewer in that 25 to 64-year-old group. Again, that portends a declining labor force, continued worker shortages, in fact, worsening worker shortages. Now, if you look at the last two columns, again, the projections look at, when you combine all this, a very marginal increase in overall population. But if you see what's driving it, It's the driving it is that 65 and older. It's the last half of the baby boom aging past 65. Now, I will say they're not all retiring, and that is a part of the labor force that businesses can tap, because I think they have, a lot of skills and talents. They're not necessarily going to work full time, but it's a resource that we will need to really tap into, I would say, over the next decade or two. So overall, the trends are very similar to the state, but I think Chippewa is overall, in many ways, doing much better than the state. So we've talked about declining births. Chippewa is that pattern for Chippewa, which is the births is that the teal line, very much the same pattern as the state, a little bit more volatility because it's only a small county compared to the state. But notice what's happening over the last couple of years. The number of deaths in the county have surpassed the number of births. We call that natural change. That's the change from births and deaths in the county. Historically, it's been very positive. That the chart on the right. If you look at 2020, again, that's 2020 is a little of an anomaly because of COVID. We know that, but even by 2022, marginally negative. That number is going to grow significantly in terms of natural change because, again, the first of the baby boomers turned 75 in 2020. Again, a big population. Many of them are headed into their 80s now. So we're going to see that number. And unfortunately, if you look at the birth chart, you see the births coming down, declining in the 90s. Actually, before that, they were rising. So they tend to go in cycles. One of the big challenges, we have not seen any indication that birth number is going to turn around. Normally, you start to see some indications that overall births are going to change. We've not seen any of that. So that gap between births and deaths is going to grow. What does that mean? If your natural change is negative, just to stay even on population, you've got to bring in people to the county. Now, here is where you're doing much better. And I will have to apologize here because when I was looking this over and thinking about what I was going to say today, that orange bar on the right just didn't seem right to me. And I went back and recalculated it, and I don't know exactly what I did. It's a little bit high. It's not that much difference. The real number on that orange bar is about 2,200, which is about a 3.5% increase. And I can get a new PowerPoint if we want that. But the story is the same. So if you look at net migration, the number moving in versus the number leaving, 2000 to 2010, fairly solid net migration, declining over the last decade. And unlike the state, where the state is looking like it's going to stay flat, maybe decline a little bit, you're on pace, at least, given the numbers that we know of, to turn that around, which is a net positive, obviously, for the county. But again, with the baby boomers exiting the workforce and some of them passing on, that number's got to get closer to the 2000 to 2010 number. So we talked about that 25 to 64-year-old population, and so that leads into workforce and jobs. And Chippewa County is a net out-commute county. So let me just talk about this. So labor force your labor force is the number of people who are either working or looking for work, 16 and older. Okay, so that's your labor force. Chippewa County has sort of defied the state a little bit here because the state's labor force actually started declining after about 2017. It's turned up in the last 2 years. Given the demographics of the state, we're not sure what's going on there exactly, but and yours has turned up at about the same time, but you really kind of missed that downturn. But essentially, it's been fairly close to flat for 20 years. I mean, not a whole lot of change. The county has significantly increased the number of jobs, and that's a big positive. Normally, if you see a flat labor force, you're generally not going to see much of an increase in jobs because obviously businesses need workers in order to grow their company. In terms of counties, you have a lot of statewide. That's more true than in counties. Counties, you have your workforce, your actual potential labor force is not only your county, but it's really neighboring counties to some degree as well. You have that that part. So let me actually look at this slide since we're talking about commuting. Just wanted to show you sort of this is a snapshot from the Census Bureau in 2022. So on the left there is workers. That's the number of people in the county, Chippewa County there, 29,336, who are not just in the labor force, but in the labor force and working. It doesn't matter where they're working. But 16,000 of them are working somewhere else. So it's a big chunk. On the right is the number of jobs in the county, 25,000, and about half of those jobs are filled by commuters from mostly neighboring counties. And as you can expect, Eau Claire is the biggest source of commuters, one way or another. Dunn, Barron, and Clark in a certain order, which makes total sense. So what it tells you, there's a lot of commuting back and forth, but given that those numbers of commuters back and forth, that high percentage, one of the things it tells you is you may be able to continue to grow jobs, again, because there is already a lot of commuting, and so that you do see you're competitive, obviously, on wages and amenities. So people are coming here. If your workforce flattens, you may be able to continue to attract from elsewhere. Now, this is the big challenge in terms of Chippewa County. We saw that essentially your labor force was basically flat. One of the reasons it's flat, and I'm surprised it's not declining, is that labor force participation is declining and declining by a fair amount. So what's labor force participation? Essentially, the number or the percentage of people 16 and older who are actually in the labor force. Generally, that sits around 68 to 72%, somewhere in that range statewide. That's been declining significantly after 2017, and it's ticked up lately. That trend is very similar to the state. The 2017 and later, and the tick up in the state is kind of the same. What's different is, your participation rate has really been declining since 2010, very, very slightly. Now, we don't have detail at the county level onto what's driving this, but I think the state level numbers are instructive in terms of at least one of the factors. And it's really a troubling number. And that is, if you look at actually both men and women, labor force participation, especially 35 to 44, has dropped significantly in Wisconsin. It hasn't done it nationally. I'm not sure which other states have seen it, but we've seen a big decline there. That could be going on here in Chippewa County as well. Why would that be happening? And it's been especially large. The biggest. It started about 2017, after 2017, but it's been especially large after 2020. The first thing, obviously, that comes to mind is young families making a decision on workforce because, we see some of this anecdotally nationally that with COVID and working remote and having the kids at home, they have made a conscious decision to continue one of them being a stay-at-home parent. The other factor, and we did a study on this, is either too costly or unable to find childcare. It's a big challenge everywhere. So that's part of what's driving that. The other thing that's driving that decline, though, and it's a fair portion of it, is the 65 and older population. Obviously, as you have a bigger chunk of the 16 and older population moving past 65 and not in the workforce, it's just going to naturally bring that number down. But again, your decline there is a much bigger decline than what we're seeing statewide. So this is, again, a 20,000-foot view of this, but so what does this all portend? So kind of as we talked about, the decline in the decline we're expecting to see in the 25 to 64-year-old population has basically portends a smaller workforce soon, and that labor force participation rate making it worse. So the question that I would ask, if I saw that, I would say, okay, how do we attract more prime workers to the county? What can we do to bring more people into the county? I say this at the state level. I've been saying at the state level, we've been saying this for 15 years because we've seen this going way back. What can we do at the state level to bring more people into the state? Unfortunately, that has all fallen on deaf ears. So that we talked about that possible large decline in the youth population portends a smaller workforce down the road. And the question that come to my mind, lack of affordable childcare behind that. And if it is, and we think it's at least partly due to it, how do we ensure this is available and affordable? And this is I do think childcare is a major challenge. We know it's a challenge for the state, but solving the problem is very, very difficult, as we're seeing nationwide. This may be controversial, but I'm of the opinion that childcare is not going to be able to be solved alone in the private sector. You have a service that is needed for young families who are just at the beginning of their careers. They're at the bottom of their earnings arc. You have a childcare workforce that is among the lowest paid in the state, and yet the cost is extraordinary, is exorbitant. So just that's something that if you raise prices to pay your childcare workers more, you've got to pass that cost on, and it's already unaffordable. So I do think there is a role for the public sector here somehow, and I don't know exactly what that looks like. But I think it's got to be the business community and the public sector trying to figure this out. And again, that's something that has to be done. It had to have been done 15 years ago. But and then the other part, we've talked about the 65 and older population, narrow that down to the 75 and older. That population, think about this, the 75 and older population in this county expected to grow 40% in this decade and 30% in the next, another 30% in the next decade. We just did the report on that. We know a portion of them are going to need elderly services. Do we have the infrastructure and really the workforce to care for that population? Again, that's something that should have been addressed, at least thought about a while ago. But I would say that we still have time to really think about that and figure out. Again, it's a huge, that's the biggest number that we're going to see in terms of percentage increases, and really what I think is going to be one of the biggest stresses on our system. And the question is, how are we going to deal with that? And I think that's an open question and something that should be thought about really now, and begin to think about how do we address that. So let me just say, so my last question, so what are you going to do to change your future? You have a glimpse of what your future looks like. I'd be more than happy if you have questions about this at some point, give me a call, drop me an email. We're more than glad to help you. Let me just put out a little plug. We are starting a new research piece. And I think you'll like it a lot. It's a very short piece. It's going to be about 2 pages. We call it Spotlight. First one's coming out Thursday, and it's on the declining youth population. But I think over the next, we're going to address a lot of topics. But over the next 6 months, one of the things we'll do is look at in a little bit more detail these different age segments. There's new population projections that were just put out by the Department of Administration. You've probably heard about them, but we're going to dig into those and at the county level in more detail, and I think that'll be very helpful in terms of sort of filling in some of the gaps here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dale. Now move on to item C, department reports. And one is Human Resource Division orientation. Tony?
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Hofelder, Human Resources Director, and I will try to go swiftly. This is the last of, I believe, 3 presentations that we've done as part of the orientation. It's already the 2nd year, but we'll try to swiftly kind of go through some of these slides. This slide here, this presentation overall is kind of the high level of what human resources is. I'm not going to go through each slide, but I'm going to kind of page through a couple of these. So basically, HR, we're about the humans, so human resources. This slide here really is all the different tracks that someone could go into in a large organization. These could be different titles. When people ask what you do in human resources, a lot of times the quick and easy answer is the hiring and firing. A lot of times people assume that's what we do, but we do obviously everything in between. A lot of the reason why myself, as well as two of my colleagues in the department, came into human resources is because of the people. We love working with people, but we also love the law. We love the rules and the structure that comes with human resources. And so these are a lot of the different tenets that you'll see beyond just onboarding and offboarding of employees. We just recently updated our mission statement, our vision statement. We also have some values that we put together. Our team kind of talked through this, brought it through to the executive committee. And again, you'll see our little tag there where it says humans. We decided that this was so important for us that we wanted that to be part of our vision statement, that we had that part stand out. But this is something that you guys can look at. So what is one of the reasons that you should care as a county board? Obviously, there's a large cost to the humans, to the employees that work here at Chippewa County. And so we have the data that is put up here. Finance gave that to me. Our budget for county staff is 34% of the total budget. When I first came to the county, we were about 50%. And over the last several years, as I've given this presentation, it's gotten a little bit less, and that has in part to do with the consortium. So we have the RWC consortium that we've talked about, and a lot of that is funded by the state. So because of some of that funding and how that works, that brings that total down. Depending on the industry that you're in, if you're in the manufacturing industry, a lot of times you'll see that percentage a lot lower because the cost of equipment and the different types of products that they have. And in the service industry, you'll see that percentage even higher. So the county typically, like I said, was about 50% for many years, but it's down a little bit because of that. The next slide here is just a lot of numbers to kind of update you on where we're at, because I get these questions quite a bit. At the time that I put this presentation together, it was prior to presenting it to the executive committee in October. So as of September 30th of 2024, we had 419 general municipal employees. This is the vacancies that we had. WPPA, that is our union so it's going to be your patrol officers and investigators. 6 elected officials for a total of 445. Next is just our different statuses of employees. So of those 445 employees, kind of where their different statuses are. 378 are full-time employees and so on. You'll see that there's 21 county board supervisors, and at the time that we did this, we had 52 paid committee members. Now, committee members can decide not to be paid, so we have many more committee members than the 52 there, but those are the ones that are actually being paid to attend committees. And then over the course of the years that I've put this presentation together since I've been here, those are the different numbers that we've had as totals. So just wanted to give you a little update on that growth there. Keep in mind that the point of time of the presentation also is a factor. So if I were to have given the presentation at a different time of the year, sometimes we have seasonals that are coming and going. So at the time of this data, all of the seasonals that we have in the parks, in highway, those different types of seasonals, land conservation has some. That's, I think, a little bit of the accountability of that number. Otherwise, a lot of it has to do also with our WC and the growth that we have in that area. Then I'm going to just kind of briefly take you through the staff within the HR team. We have Joanna Hart. She's been with us since 2017. We have 2 human resource generalists. Joanna is one of those, and her main function as a generalist is leave management. And so we have 2 different generalists, one that does onboarding and one that does leave management. And so all the different things up here is what she's handling. So anything from the family medical leave, we have county medical leave and personal leave. She helps our employees navigate that. She is just a great personable person, and so when it comes to those types of issues, it's the highs and lows that employees are going through from births and having growing families to having deaths in the family or having serious health conditions. And so she does a great job helping our employees navigate that confidential information and situations. She also handles all of our work injuries. She handles our safety, security, ID, access, management policies, all of the accommodations under ADA, so anybody with a disability. She is the lead for our wellness initiatives in our wellness work group, and all the other things that are listed on there. I won't keep reading through all that. Our second generalist, her name is Christy. She started with us in 2021. She does all of our onboarding. So she's really sees our employees in the life of the employees. She does our recruitment, works with all of our hiring managers, does all the pre and post offer testing, all of our orientation. She does all of our benefit administration, and then also is our payroll. She's one of the 2 payroll processors. And then she also helps people off board. So she will talk through their benefits, do the exit interview. She also helps our office with unemployment administration as well. Kathy has been with us since 2017 as well as Joanna. Both of them have been with us for some time. She is 3/4 times within our department. So she's working a quarter of her time in facilities and parks, helping with park registrations and their maintenance. So she's working about 500 hours there. So she's there on Wednesdays typically, and then in our office full-time the rest of the time. And she is amazing. She helps us keep up with recruitment and payroll. So she will help tag team with Christy to make sure that she's not getting buried. She will also help with ID cards and processing and helping Joanna with some of her tasks. She also does all of our file maintenance. And she's just, like I said, she's great within our department. She's the first face that you'll see, doesn't sit in an office, but sits in the cube. And then there's myself. I do what you guys have seen and hopefully seen is the policy development and administration, all employee relations. So that would be when employees are maybe struggling and a department head or a manager comes to me and needs maybe an investigation done, a corrective action or some coaching. I help with all of that. And the reason we have that as a central one person within the department is to make sure that we're consistent across departments. Departments might have different issues, but a lot of times we'll see a pattern of those different issues, and we want to make sure that we're treating them as best as we can in a like manner. I work with Todd and the county administrator on all labor relations. We're in the process of doing that right now with our union. I'm the point person for all compensation, anything compensation related from position classification to working with our consultant on our salary schedule or market analysis. I'm the civil rights compliance officer, our language officer, and privacy officer as well. Those are some of the things that I help with as well as employee engagement. This slide is just wanted to make sure that the board was aware what our performance review process is. We do this annually. We're all in the process of doing it right now. These are the different competencies that all of our employees are evaluated on. So this data on the left is what our employees are evaluated on: job knowledge, technical competence, customer service, productivity, results, and teamwork. The right column there is what our supervisors are evaluated on. And then the ratings are listed there as well. We just wanted to make sure that you're all aware of that. That's something that we do annually, and that's driven per policy. We process payroll biweekly. So like I said, we have two employees in our office that process it, and then we also work with the finance department. There's also several payroll processors within the larger departments across the county, and so we're doing that biweekly. It's submitted by the department, HR reviews it, and then it goes to finance for final processing. So it's definitely a team effort. The Affordable Care Act was something that was that is complex, and it makes the county that we have a lot of different processes that are, I would call, a little bit burdensome on both finance and HR. But there's a lot of biweekly tracking that we're doing to ensure that we don't have to offer health insurance benefits as a high cost for anyone who's part-time or limited term. So we do a lot of costing and tracking to make sure that we stay within compliance with that law. We have a consultant that we work with by the name of Dustin Thompson. He owns Keeping Safety Simple. He is a safety trainer. He works both at the highway and at the courthouse. You'll see some of the days that he's here on site. He's been a great resource. He's, I would say, attributed to why we have seen such great reduction in our workers' comp claims, especially in the highway. He has a great relationship with our highway commissioner, Brian Kelly, and the work group there. So he actively is part of their work group. And so he's here often to do ergonomics assessments and lots of other different initiatives. But he's been a great resource for us from a safety side. He also helps us with what we call spotlight videos. He has a knack for doing videos and be able to kind of efficiently put them together for us. So if you go out to the county website and you click under County Board, there'll be a link to the current ones that we have. We're probably less than halfway done with the department, so we still have quite a few ways to go. And then that's just a list of the different work groups that we have related to safety. This is a slide I asked Joanna to help me put together, and she helps me with this every year. This is a busy slide. So basically, what I'd like you to kind of see, though, is there's the budget that we have for the work comp claims. Then the budget actual is what we ended up at. And so the color coding is what you'll see is the main year that we were over budget. That 2022 is when we had one serious injury in the highway. And that's a good illustrator of just one injury, what it can do to your total line there. And so we had somebody have a head injury. And then it'll show what's total paid, total recovery. That would be what we would get back. Just like health insurance, we have work comp is self-funded, but we also have a partially self-funded. We have a carrier called a TPA. And so that's WMIC. You've probably heard in Lori's presentations talk about that. And so that's when we get some money back because we've hit a deductible amount because of a specific claim. So that's what happened there. The other thing that's hard with work comp is it can take years to get a claim. And so sometimes we'll have a good year, but we're still paying on a claim from years prior. So for 2022, for example, for that claim, we're going to be paying and seeing that for quite a few years. You'll also see the recordable injuries that's defined by law. So those are the different ones that are recordable, which means they sought care or had some lost time from work. And you'll see those lines as well. This is just a slide on our contract. At the time that this was put together, I don't even think that we had decided that we were going to open our negotiations early, but the board has approved to do that. So we're in the process of doing that now. So the next contract will actually run July 1 of 2025 until whatever's negotiated. So we're in the process of working on that now. These are just a lot of the different laws that we navigate in our department or that we get questions on that we work through. And so I just wanted to put that up there and illustrate that for you. The last slides in this presentation are really to do with turnover, and it's one of the reasons I actually enjoy preparing for this presentation each year. It's because it's a good data crunching to kind of see where we land every 2 years in the areas of turnover. It takes a lot of time, it takes hours to put this data together, but before I even go through it, I put this together, I think after one or two times of presenting this, because numbers can be very misleading. And this is a really great example of why they can be. I'm somebody who has a little bit of trust issues when somebody presents me numbers because I know there's a way to twist and turn and make numbers tell a story. And so this is a good slide that I just wanted to quick go through. So Springbrook report. So Springbrook is our HRIS, or our accounting software. It has all the data of our employees. And so when I started to put turnover data together, we had 96 new employees in this example in 2015. 32 employees terminated in 2015 when I pulled that data out of Springbrook. That would tell us that we have a 33% turnover of our new employees if we calculated it, and I did no further looking into the data. After researching the data, however, I was able to see that we had 17 of those new and terminated employees in 2015 were interns and seasonal employees. So we would want to look at that. Is that really turnover for what we would want to talk about in the area of turnover, or were those decisions that we made to hire seasonals and interns, and should we really use that data? The second thing that I noticed is 4 of the 32 employees that were terminated did not actually terminate employment, but they changed status. And at the time, how we looked at Springbrook, we would create a new record or a new employee number. And so again, making sure that you really study the data and don't just take it at face value, and it really wanting to look into that. And then 2 of the new employees only had a new employee number created in the system. So again, that was another reason. So if we were to really look at that data and dig into it, we really had 94 new employees in 2015. 17 were interns or seasonal employees. So 9 of the 94 new employees were hired in 2014. So it was a 10% turnover rate, not a 33%. So I illustrate this because that's what I try to do then in these next few slides, is really dig in. So as you study those slides, if they are important to you, just make sure you look at some of that detail, because it really will help paint a good picture. This is also a new slide that I added in 2019 through 2021, this was the number of recruitments that we had coming out of our office. And so that's 65, 72, 62. And the number of times that we had to rerun an advertisement for recruitment. You'll see a huge shift starting in 2022. We had 94. In 2023, we had 98. And we ended in 2024 over 100. And so this has been a real something I keep Randy informed of. I talk a lot about our staff in our office, specifically the recruiter, Christy, that you saw. She is just very, very busy. And so I even let the department heads know today that we're going to be probably seeing a little bit of delay. And I think in part of some of this is because of the number of reruns. For example, in Todd's department, we added a assistant corporation counsel or deputy corporation counsel, and it took 3 advertisements to fill that position. In our sheriff's department, you guys have heard updates. There's a lot of reruns for those different types of positions. And so I think that's the reason for this. So just thought it was good to look at that data as well. The next several slides, I'm not going to go through. I'm going to let you kind of go through them yourself, but it really takes you through 2022 and 2023 turnover data. It'll tell you what types of so we had 83 employees separate, and then it'll break it down as to what types of separation those were. It'll give us a turnover rate. And again, when I did the turnover rate, I did not include seasonals or temporary employees in that. Or I did, but then I put if we didn't include them, what that rate is as well. And then there's a little bar chart for you to be able to see that breakdown. And then I took it a step further and broke down the retirees and which departments they came from. And then those voluntary resignations, what department those came from. So you'll be able to kind of dig in and look into that. And again, if you ever have any questions on these, I'm happy to talk through them with you afterwards as well. I tried to also summarize some of the reasons that people provide on why they're leaving. And so I get that question a lot. A lot of times I get it specific to a department if someone's concerned about a department, and I can always break that down. But this is overall of the voluntary resignations, what the reason was that they gave us during their exit interview. And then I did the same thing for 2023. Then, this is just a duplicate slide. I'm not sure why I put it in there twice. Just really wanted you to know it. This slide, though, is a summary. So this presentation was put together previous from my predecessor in the position. And so I just kept her data. I can't tell you for sure. I did the best I could to try to understand how she ran the numbers, but I can tell you since 2015, we ran the numbers identical to how we do it today, because that's when I started. And so I can tell you with certainty that we're comparing apples to apples. And then what I did is I ran the numbers as to how long were these individuals working with the county at the time that they left. And so you can see what we were able to see, that from 0 to 5 years, that's where we see most of our turnover. And when I dug even deeper, it was usually within the 0 to 2 years. And so there was an initiative back in 2016, 2017, when we started to really see that, where we really, really worked hard with our managers on onboarding. Because if we onboard better, onboard well, we can maybe start to reduce some of that early on turnover. And usually once you get them for 2 years, they're stuck. And that's kind of what we were hoping for, is to try and get them through and get them to stay in those departments. And so that's tended to be what we saw. But here's the 2022 and 2023 data up there. You'll see that the highest turnover that we actually did see was in 2022. And I also look, every time I put this presentation together, out at the BLS website, which is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And their 2022 numbers, when we looked at public sector non-education, was about 21.6 to 22.8% that year. So we were right in line. I mean, we were actually doing better, but there was a jump in our sector for 2022. And then 2023, it came back down to a quite low comparatively across the years. But according to BLS, the average for, again, local, state government, non-educational was 15.6 to 16.8%. And so we were right there in line with what BLS said. And then I usually don't go into 2024 but because I knew that we were getting questions and there were county board members that were coming to Randy asking questions, at the time of September 24th, I decided to put some data together. What this told me when I was looking at it, it was just trending very similar to 2023. So it didn't tell me that we were higher, even though it felt like it was higher. It felt like that from a turnover standpoint in our office. But I would tell you we had a lot of retirements in this end of this quarter, so it could have changed a little bit. But again, I didn't run the numbers since September. Any questions? All right.
Thank you, Tony. Next, we'll move on to item 2 of the monthly statements of claim filed with the clerk for an update.
This is something that you'll see now going forward on every agenda and in every packet. You'll see the 2 pages there, kind of explains and has our county ordinance. Then in the middle of the document, you'll see the actual claims that were filed from the last county board meeting to the current one. And really, it's going to be a week off because the agenda goes out a week before the meeting. And then the second page is just a reminder of how all the claims are handled. During this time, this is just a report only, so you can see the information. If you have questions on any of the claims, you would direct them to Corporation Counsel, and they would be able to answer any of the questions you would have.
Thank you. This is an item I think we've kind of neglected for a while, and our ordinance states that we're required to do, so we're getting back on track. Item 8, business items. Resolution 125, resolution to amend grant with the Department of Energy, Housing, Community Resources for Hope Village housing conversion. Is Jessica here?
Yep. We'll need a motion.
Yeah, entertain a motion to approve.
Later, some moves.
Second.
Resolution 1-25, resolution to approve up to $2,628,217 to be added to the grant contract number HSG 24-07 between the state of Wisconsin and Chippewa County to be utilized by Hope Village to be used for a conversion project to create additional affordable housing.
To do that in the wrong order, but we do have the motion on the floor, so we can discuss.
Okay. I don't have a presentation. Obviously, this has come to this group once. The current request is to increase the funds to finish the entire Indian Head project. When we initially started the request, we came in with the 1.5 million that would not have finished the entire conversion. And the state said there was additional funding and wanted to estimate the additional funding to finish the project. So we're coming back to request, instead of the 1.5, the 2.628, so that we can convert all 27 units at Indian Head into the efficiency apartments. So I guess I'm available to answer any questions if there are any questions in regards to that.
All right, right now, questions are limited to the county board right now. Thank you. Yes, Supervisor. Well,
Supervisor Hennick,
go on.
in a previous presentation, you talked about having families, women and children being able to stay there. Recently in a paper, you talked about single individuals staying in your hotel. What I heard before and what I read in the paper doesn't match up with what I heard. So I'd like to know exactly what we're agreeing to. And are women and children going to be allowed in these apartments?
I would say that is more of a Hope Village question. These are efficiency apartments. The average square footage of these units are going to be about 300 square feet. So I don't think the intended tenants would be families just because of the size of the unit, they're 300-ish square feet. So whereas a family could potentially rent the units, I think these are more designed for individuals.
It's not what I heard before. It's kind of a misguided. I mean, I'm all for helping people. I just want to hear the straight skinny on it.
Absolutely.
And women and children count. You know, we have homeless women, we have homeless children. And I just want to know if there's a home there for them. Straight up, from your mouth to my ears, I want to hear you say.
So at Hope Village, absolutely. In the tiny homes, they are serving families, women, and children. This project is affordable housing, so these are just efficiency apartments. So they're filling a different need. They're going to help those graduating from the Hope Village tiny homes to get into an independent rental. So they're two different projects.
So women and children will not be allowed in there?
Yes, of course. Women, you know, a mother with a baby would be allowed to rent there. A couple could rent there. Maybe a short term, maybe a family that isn't able to secure large enough housing for themselves. They might be there temporarily until they can secure a housing that would be more appropriate for their family size. So yes, it's going to be open to anyone who is income eligible and will meet the income guidelines from the funding.
Thank you. I needed to hear that.
Supervisor Garrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Were you here for public comments? Beginning of the meeting?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'm not going to attempt the last name, but Luke's presentation brought up a subject, and I'm wondering if that has been properly addressed, or if there's policy to protect those type of things.
I'm going to let someone from Hope Village talk in regards to their screening process for their tenants, because this is a building they're going to own and manage. So that would be if they're able to answer in regards to how they will manage that property.
Currently, the motel.
Can you come up front?
Yeah, please come up front. Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ruth Rosenau. I'm on the board of Hope Village, former director of Chippewa County Housing Authority. But right now, the hotel, there's no vetting process for whoever they want to rent or give a room to, they can give a room to. When Hope Village would take over, we will be vetting our guests the same way that we are vetting the guests at our village, the tiny houses and the rental housing that we're building in that village. So we will have a very thorough vetting process that will begin to take place, which doesn't occur at the hotel now. There isn't really anyone to tell them who they can or cannot rent to. So that would be a major, in my opinion, improvement to the location and to the property.
Continuation question, Chairman.
Yes.
So your vetting process, I understand that. And if there is a violation, do you have a policy and a procedure to go from there?
We do. So at Hope Village, anytime there's a violation, we're able to ask those guests to leave and find other alternatives for housing. With this project, we will have to follow the fair housing laws that are in the state. So it'll be a little bit different, but our plan is to continue the same vetting process that we currently have while following those fair housing rules.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor Schubert.
I think she answered my question already a little bit, but how far in the project has it started? Have you purchased the property, or is it all in the future on the this grant?
Yeah, so we have a purchase agreement with the owner of the motel, but we have a closing date that's later this spring. Once we know for sure that you're going to pass this resolution, that we know for sure that the city council will give us the special use permit that's required, and then to know for sure that we're awarded the grant dollars.
Supervisor Seidlitz?
Oh, Karen's had me, ain't she?
Oh, sorry.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think my answers have, or my questions have been kind of answered. I guess thoughts go back to public opinion people that talked before. And so once it's purchased, then how long till the people that are currently living there are moved out? And when will the vetting process start? And will the vetting process be approved by the neighbors or Luke that spoke tonight?
Well, we believe, of course, that the owners of the motel will continue to operate it as a motel up until the closing date. Once the property closes, we'll begin that renovation process, but not all of the rooms will be renovated on the same day, so there will be rooms still available. But again, we won't be operating it as a motel. We'll be operating it as affordable housing with efficiency apartments. That's what the special use permit in front of the city is for.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Now Supervisor Seidlitz.
Yeah, with the concern of the residents that are around this building, I understand it won't be a motel anymore, but a motel is not filled at all times, where housing, all the 27 units are gonna be filled at all times. So if you get a bad egg in there, it's not like a motel where that person leaves and it's not there no more, gets taken away. They're not there repeatedly. So how long is the rent terms for these properties?
So the lease would be initially for 1 year for those that are moving in at the beginning of the project. Once their lease of 1 year expires, then it becomes a month-to-month lease. So, and again, I think the benefit is that somebody who's staying in a motel room is not vetted whatsoever, and they're not necessarily members of this community. I think both gentlemen who spoke earlier mentioned that they've lived in Chippewa Falls for a very long time. Those of us that live in Chippewa Falls take pride in this community, that those who are coming to stay for a night or two or a week certainly may not have in this community. So what we're doing is providing housing for folks that are Chippewa County residents. That will certainly be our priority. And, people that are part of this community already.
Supervisor Kempe?
I just know there's other hotels in this area that they do for rehoming people. They are bringing criminals and not just veterans or not just home. They're bringing in criminals. And then there is one in my neighborhood that does bring in riffraff, and there's police there and stuff all the time. And I was just I get that they noticed it a little bit, but where do you guys draw the line, or what are you guys gonna do? Because it's hard to evict people too. I mean, owning rental houses or anything else. I mean, or are you guys gonna be in the programs to rehome these people? Because then they just get rehomed there from everywhere, right? Like, I mean, they're coming from all over the place to live in these type of places.
I'm not sure I'm understanding the term rehoming people. Could you?
Just people coming out of prison or jail where they have no places to live. They're giving them these short-term rental places, and then there's a lot of crime coming with it.
That's true. That happens in many motels. But again, we're not going to function as a motel. We're functioning as affordable housing. So we're going to vet those people that we rent the
There's rules against it.
efficiency apartments to. Well, we'll be like any other landlord. We can look at applications. And again, based on the fair housing laws, we can make decisions about who we rent to and who we don't, just like any other landlord in the city would.
But it's still possible that there could be felons or rapists or anything if they pass your requirement.
Well, again, we would stick to the same vetting process that we currently have. So we do an interview with folks that live in our tiny houses. We do a background check. We use the same background check system that the school district has. The Chippewa Falls Police Department has actually assigned a detective for us to vet people. Many people use CCAP, or even if you use a background check, those aren't up to date from yesterday. But the police detective that we work with knows what happens in this community this morning. And so we get input from the police department. We'll continue to do that with these apartments. I don't know if Chuck's able to speak or not, but Chuck's been involved with the city council since we started in 2016. And I think if he were able to, he would tell you that our vetting process is very strong. We've had one incident at Hope Village in the last 8 years where the police department showed up to arrest someone. That was a 14-year-old boy who made a stupid decision, like the stupid decisions I made when I was 13 and 14. We've never had an adult arrested as a guest at Hope Village.
Supervisor Guthman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to the housing insecurity issues just in general. And then if you could also follow up with, you already answered my second question, which was I was wondering what kind of relationship that there currently was for public safety with our law enforcement and that type of thing. So I think I got a pretty good handle on that second part, unless you want to add to that. But if you could speak to the housing insecurity issues and then what happens with that piece when we don't have opportunities for affordable housing.
So I'm involved in our community homeless group, and we just met recently and talked about the unmet needs and talked about the families in Chippewa County that are sleeping outside right now. And there's just those that have reached out. There's 46 families in the last month that are sleeping outside. Our wait list for Section 8 is large. You know, it takes months for an individual to come up on that wait list, and then they still have the obstacle of finding an affordable housing unit to be able to utilize the voucher and get that help. And so there's definitely a need for additional affordable housing in our community. It serves a different clientele than some of the other developments that are happening in Chippewa Falls. There are some great other apartments coming in, but they're not going to serve the clients that we serve. And so this is definitely necessary for our community because it is going to help with unmet needs and those that are not housed in our community.
Thank you.
Recently, you're probably aware that Romice had an issue with one of their buildings, which was sinking into the river. And so that was a loss of 25 units of affordable housing that was subsidized housing. Those people were scattered in the community. In addition, we have 2 projects that were built with low-income tax credits. And they have a period of time where they have to control the rents and keep the rents low and rent to a certain income level of people. 2 of those units or buildings are coming due. They're sunsetting. And so those restrictions will be lifted so then those landlords can raise the rent, the owners can raise the rent. So we are anticipating the loss of some additional, what has been affordable housing. Right now in probably the entire county, there are very few efficiency apartments. And those are units, these units will be $831 a month, and that includes their utilities. That really becomes an affordable unit for somebody that's trying to live on Social Security income, SSI, or other disability, low disability payments. There are very few units around. Even the one-bedroom units far exceed that amount. And so these 27 units are going to be very unique. We don't have hardly any efficiencies. That's meaning efficiency. They have a bathroom with a door, but the rest of the room is open. The bedroom, living room, kitchen area is all one big room. And there just aren't very many of those available, and those are very affordable for people who are fixed incomes, low Social Security or SSI. So this is going to meet a need that just doesn't exist anywhere in the county that I'm aware of.
Supervisor Hennick?
You've done a good job explaining everything, but in my neighborhood organization, I'm president of my neighborhood organization, and we have an extensive both city housing and county section 8 in my neighborhood organization. I've kind of become a subject matter expert on the housing rules for the city of Eau Claire and part of Lake Hallie. What I've seen is continued violations after they pass the vetting process and after they have attained homes in city housing and Section 8, mostly through E and B, realty, over in the county of Chippewa and Lake Hallie area. City of Eau Claire housing has very strict rules and violations and notifications on violations and a quick process to a legal process, but it's fairly quickly to remove them. Have you set up standards similar to or even close to what the City of Eau Claire housing has set up for violations?
I'm not familiar with what they set up, so I couldn't speak to what they have set up.
Basically, it's HUD housing.
Yeah, again, what we will do is we will vet people the way we have over the last 8 years very successfully. And normally, if you go through that vetting process, you know what type of background people have. And of course, what we're going to be looking for is people to rent to, just like any other landlord, that are as stable as possible. And I think sometimes it gets confused because Hope Village houses homeless people in our tiny houses. We're not talking about housing homeless people in these units. These units will help keep people from becoming homeless because there will be affordable housing for people. And I think you're all aware of that, right? In Chippewa County and Eau Claire County in the Chippewa Valley, there's a very, very low supply of affordable housing. Sometimes we call it workforce housing, and the reason for that is I think you've noticed that there's a number of restaurants in the area that have closed down. Well, part of that is because folks who do those jobs and get paid that wage can't find affordable housing, so they move on to a different location. So we're trying to actually come up with housing that's affordable so that our community will have those employees that are in that service industry.
Well, what I was trying to get at, I understand what you're saying, and obviously the vetting process is very good. What I'm asking for is, what have you done, have thought about for the aftermath of what the possible violations that happen, and how do you protect the community with your set up standards? You've done a good job, from what I hear you, in setting up standards, getting people in there. What do you have to do to deal, what kind of standards do you have to quickly deal with effectively violations. And that's what I'm concerned about, to protect the rest of your community in that building. You know, you want to have safe and secure housing afforded, and how quickly can you react to a violation, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so again, we'll have to follow the fair housing laws that every other landlord in the area works with. But if there is, if somebody breaks the lease, if somebody goes against the lease terms, we certainly have the right to no longer house them. But again, we're like every other landlord in the area. We do need to follow those fair housing laws.
Supervisor Lotz?
Thank you, Chairman. I guess one of my questions maybe to Randy, is there 1.128 million, is there money in our budget to cover the rest?
Yeah, doesn't have anything to do with the county. Technically, we don't, the housing authority is in our building, but they're not a county entity. So everything that they do is independent of the county. It just has to run through here because they're part of a consortium for the county, but it has really nothing to do with the county.
Okay,
Won't touch our budget.
okay, thank you. And my second question is to Luke? Yep. The vetting issues, take it back to your people?
Just, excuse me, Supervisor Lotz, the discussion now is just between
sorry,
supervisors
sir.
and we have, just, that's protocol. Sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay. Supervisor Kelly?
Thank you, Chair. As a child of low-income housing, I appreciate what you're doing. I grew up just fine, I guess. Kind of made it. Are you willing to change your conditions of your lease on these units to maybe a 60-day lease between you and the tenants to kind of ease their minds?
The funding that we're using and that is passing through this grant process is really federal dollars that were awarded to the state of Wisconsin to administer out to non-entitlement communities. So this is federal dollars. It comes from the American Rescue Plan, part of the COVID work that was done 3 or 4 years ago or past. So this money would come. With this money, though, there are federal regulations about how it has to be administered. We have to have income-eligible tenants in this building. The incomes are very generous because it's 51% of the tenants must be below 80% of the county median income. The county median income for a family of one is $35,000. So really, there's, it's a pretty generous income allowance. We, of course, can take people below that amount, but 51% of the units must be occupied by people under that income amount. So then the money is coming from the state, and it's passing through the regional CDBG program, and will be, it's set aside for us. It's tax dollars that were paid a long time ago that we're trying to bring home. It's some of it's tax dollars. It's going to go somewhere. It's going to go somewhere in the state of Wisconsin. And we're saying, hey, why not us? Why not this project?
The other thing I guess I have a question on is, are you willing to keep the Indian head sign?
Our purchase agreement included the sign. We actually negotiated for that sign. Some of the city council members had the same concern. There was an article posted by the Leader Telegram, and most of the conversation was about that sign, people wanting to buy that sign.
Supervisor Seidlitz?
I guess just got a couple of questions here. Being that I'm assuming you guys are a nonprofit and this thing will be bringing in $270K probably a year, Do you guys offer any services or programs to these people that are moving into this? And then secondly, being that it's only 310 square feet, is there a possibility that somebody could live in there and have a kid who could live in there with them? Like, I mean, even a kid that's in like middle school or something like that, because there's a lot of needs for, like that age group. Yeah,
like a single mom
yeah, like a single mom with a kid, or a single dad with a kid that's a teenager. Or,
Sure. Yeah.
and then, do you guys offer any kind of programs to help assist these people to, move when they move on to maybe an apartment or something a little bit bigger, so that they have maybe a little nicer standard of living for the child and the parent?
We do have, again, whole village is separate, but those folks that live in the tiny houses, we match each of those households up with 2 mentors and a navigator. They help them work through what's called a secure living plan. So we won't have that same setup. But we work with Jessica and others in the Chippewa County Homelessness and Hunger Group. So we're connected to a lot of agencies where we can make referrals. So though we won't have a case manager on site, we're very well aware of the resources that we can help get people to.
Thank you.
Supervisor Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. And, I definitely want to acknowledge that, projects like this and newness is always going to make a community nervous. That's natural. There's unknowns to it, and it's new. What I like about this project is it's with an organization that has proven to be a good steward of the community. That there's an example, there's a precedent that's been set with a project already within the Chippewa Falls community. And is there a risk with new projects? Yes, there's always risk, but I think they've shown that their willingness to do what they can to mitigate those risks is important. They, like I said, are good stewards of the community. And at the end of the day, Chippewa Falls and Chippewa County needs more of this and needs that affordable housing element more prevalent around the county. And like it was mentioned, this money is going to go somewhere. This is if we say no, it's the federal. They're not going to send the money back to help pay down the deficit. This money's going somewhere. This is a zero-sum game. So why not our community if it's going to be spent somewhere? And it's just having that established community partner that have proven good operators makes me less nervous about the newness of the project and the newness of the concept, because they are shown committed to the Chippewa Falls and the Chippewa County community. So, thank you.
Supervisor Erickson.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's opinion, but really what this comes down to is the county is going to be the administrator of the grant. Isn't that?
The Housing Authority.
Okay, but our job is to, my point was going to be is that really we have to do with the grant, but when it comes to the nuts and bolts of running it and the rules and everything, that's really Hope Village and the city.
It will be Hope Village owned. The property will be Hope Village owned. Once we administer the grant, we do have to follow the project for the affordability period to make sure that 51% of the units are rented to low-income households and throughout the affordability period, and then there wouldn't be our involvement after that.
So what's the city's involvement then?
Yeah, the city has to issue a special use permit. And the reason for that special use permit is because the efficiency apartments are under what are normally considered rental units. So they're approving the use of these smaller units as efficiency units. So that's their part in it, is approving that special use permit.
Supervisor Hennick.
I just caught something. There's two things I want to talk about. In other parts of the country, they have unique situations where they take part of the rent and set it aside to help them move on. Have you ever thought about any ideas like that? And second question is, you mentioned that 51% are going to be affordable housing, if I heard you right. And after a certain amount of time, explain the time frame when Hope Village owning it or stops being affordable housing in that area.
We don't have any intentions of not owning it. So if once we get it, we intend to keep it and continue to use it. The grant period is 15 years. And so we have to maintain at least 51% of the units are occupied by someone who's income eligible. We have a feeling 100% of our units are going to be people that are under those income limits. But we have to be at least 51%. Hope Village's mission in itself as a nonprofit wants to continue affordable housing. So unlike tax credit, where the program where they're private owners and they're really in it to make money, it's their way of working and earning money. That's not where we're at. We don't need to make money. So we should be able to keep these units very affordable. We'll have, things that we have to maintain, long-term maintenance, those kinds of things. But this grant money allows us to do this without a mortgage. And so we can put the money back into it or even expand into additional projects if there's excess revenue from this project. So our very mission says we're going to keep it affordable. That's who we are.
So you're not going to be like the landlords when the time period ends, they go.
Right.
Okay. Now, getting back to my other question is, have you ever thought about making some kind of a small reward to help them kickstart their next period of life?
So, again, not that this is Hope Village, but I can tell you what we've done there. We set up each household with 2 mentors and a navigator to do a secure living plan. And their goals in that are health-related, housing-related, and income-related. So we formed partnerships with some of the local lenders, and those lenders are willing to put aside $500 into a CD for our guests, and then our guests pay that CD back monthly, $50 a month, but at the end of the year, the CD and any money they put into it, plus the interest from the CD, becomes theirs. So we're doing something similar to what you're suggesting.
Very nice. Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Mueller.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only question is, my understanding is you intend to have an on-site manager. Now, this is a person that would monitor possibly, and would they also live on site in like an apartment? I know I think there's a 2-bedroom apartment that was built in that. I don't know if that would be something you'd maintain or for that.
Yeah, we're still working out the details on that. When we originally talked to the owners of the motel, we asked them if they would stay on. They live there now, in that 2-bedroom apartment. So originally in our discussion with them, we asked them if they would stay on and be the maintenance people and collect the rents and that kind of thing. They've decided not to do that. And we're going to wait until all of the special use permits and the funding and all that stuff comes together to work through that any further.
I guess my follow-up would be, would that be something you would be looking at doing, possibly?
I think that we would look at doing that just because we know that having somebody on the premise make sure that things are maintained well. Again, back to Hope Village, different project, but we have 10 tiny houses. We have a 6-plex going up and 2 duplexes going up. My office is there in the village, So it's very easy for me to keep an eye on things. I drive through the village every morning to make sure nothing's out of place. And if it is, we talk to the folks that are in the tiny houses. So we do know the advantage of having somebody on site.
Thank you.
Supervisor Kempe.
Yes, I just got a real quick question is, I mean, this is almost double the money, right? Like, is this just to buy the property or what, you guys have plans for the building or what you're gonna do to renovate? I guess that's the biggest thing is we're asking for a lot of money, right? Another $1 million, so.
Right. The funds include both the acquisition and the rehab, or they're changing. So they have done some work on upgrading rooms. So a few of the rooms have been upgraded. They do one each year that they've owned it. But each unit, we need to add a kitchenette because right now they just have a little refrigerator and microwave like a motel room has. But we intend to put in a little kitchenette that would have counter space, a sink, stove and refrigerator. And then also we're going to upgrade, we have some things that we have to meet code. A sprinkler system has to go in. We need some firewalls that need to be done. So there's some work there. We're going to try to make it a little more efficient by putting in new heating systems in each unit. So the 2.1, we're hoping, will cover, we'll get bids. We're going to create jobs in the community for people. And we'll get bids on the work, and we hope that then we'll be able to convert them all so that they will have the full kitchenette. The bathrooms do meet the code and then meet the other state codes, bringing it up. Since we're doing a certain level of rehab, then you have to do more things. So we're working with an architect that is making sure we're meeting all the codes, the state codes and the city codes.
So you're working with an architect and a builder right now?
An architect, we got some estimates to kind of get a budget, a guesstimate for budget, but it will all go out for bid. The contract, but the architect we have hired, Hope Village hired that and not a part of the grant. So, but then once the grant is awarded, then we'll put the work out for bid. Creating jobs.
Supervisor Rochelle.
Thank you, Chair. Are these renovations going to be done by local businesses, companies around here?
So the Housing Authority will put it out for bids, and any contractor is able to bid on it. And then we typically do work with the lowest bid.
Maybe to answer that question a little bit more, the sixplexes and the duplexes that we're putting up at Village, that's local contractors through Rocket Construction out of Eau Claire. Our architect is a local person also. So that's what we hope for. We certainly hope that the local contractors will come in with a bid that matches what we're able to do. So.
Any further questions? Okay, the chair would like to make comment on this. So due to our precedent, I would temporarily pass my chair duties down to the vice chair for the rest of this. I would like to address this based on my experience with Hope Village. I served on Chippewa Falls City Council for over 16 years. When they came about, let's see, almost 9 years ago to start Hope Village, I've been through the whole process. I've questioned them up and down, backwards and forwards, and they have demonstrated for the last 9 years their ability to really serve the community greatly. In fact, I was worried about the vetting like a lot of people are, especially when they place some of their tiny homes near a community. And basically, once I saw the vetting process, I was almost the other way, that I think they're almost over vetting people, because of the need. And I think they have continued to do that. And they're, how they interact with the city is responsible for the ordinances and things. So if you wonder what they do with the city, that's what they have to do to just get zoning and things like that going. Clear up what the county does. They need someone to back them to apply the grant. And the county, they need a municipal organization to do that, and that's what we're doing. There's no resources from the county. There's nothing at all that we have. As far as operating, I served on the Housing Committee for, it was over 16 years as in the council, so probably between 8 and 9 of those years, I'd been on that committee, very familiar with how they operate with their Section 8s, how the private owners of these buildings are far different than they are because, like they said, they're there for profit. They can get their money coming back to them if they have 51% low income, and then it's 15 years, you said? I wasn't sure it was 15 years. But after that's up, then they're free to go back and kind of go to the market, and that's a lot of what they do is why we're losing things. Hope Village is not that kind of, they do not have that mission. Their mission is to serve the underserved all the time. So just to clear that up. So just again, based on my experience, especially from the city, because it was a startup and it was a really long process to go to get approval of that. And they now have a track record that's very good, and I can't recommend any more of us supporting them to continue in this effort. Thank you.
I hand the gavel back.
Well,
Continue. Oh, okay. Continue for those.
so Vice Chair will
Are there any more comment?
vote, yes.
So, if not, we'll go take the vote.
I have a handful of questions.
And just with precedent, when we allow you to speak in the beginning, is the only time for the public, and the public doesn't engage when we're actually in the business. That's by ordinance, and that's just the way that we operate here. So thank you.
Well, I didn't know. I mean,
Yeah.
Just after hearing this.
It's just, sorry, that's just.
Okay. We'll take the vote on resolution 1-25.
So the resolution is passed.
Passed.
Item 2 is resolution 2-25, resolution to approve the annual work plan for the Land Conservation and Forest Management 2024.
Resolution number 2-25, resolution to approve the 2025 work plan of the Forest and Trails Division of the Department of Land Conservation and Forest Management, and to authorize the County Forest Administrator to apply for a County Forest Administration grant from the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
This grant pays for.
Just a minute. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Omar moves.
Supervisor Boone, second.
So we have a motion and a second, so we got a discussion.
This resolution pays for 50% of my salary to run the county forest program, which, as of my recent account from our finance division, produced $800,000 this last year, which is approximately $300,000 over our budgeted value. But the state grant supplies the grant to fund my position, and the activities of the department is part of our partnership with the DNR. The DNR provides us not only financial support, but also hours, physical man hours of people out helping us set up timber sales and do the administration and work that needs to be done in order to create those revenues through sound timber management. The plan doesn't change very much every year because we're based on sustainable management. So every year we come to you with 800 acres of timber management to be done, along with all the grant administration and trail work and outreach with our recreational partners that goes on every year. Besides that, there's not much that's different from the last plan you guys approved last year. I'll entertain any questions that you have.
Any questions for Matt? Supervisor Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What time of the year do you do the bidding process for this
We hold 2 bid openings per year. We have a spring opening and a fall bid opening, which are in May and November. And essentially, we put out our winter sales in the spring because we've set them up in the winter when we've gone out and done that winter work. And then we set up the rest of our sales during the normal period where we can get out to sales and not have to have frozen conditions in order to be out there. But two timber sale bid openings per year. It kind of depends on what we're advertising based on the season and when we produced those sales.
Any more questions? Okay, and we will call the vote to approve Resolution 2-25. Resolution is approved.
Thank you very much. Please contact me if you ever have any questions about our program.
Thank you. Item 3 is Resolution 3-25, resolution to author 100 days compensation committee meetings.
Resolution 3-25, resolution to authorize compensation and mileage reimbursement for up to 100 days of committee meetings 2025. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby authorize that the number of days that supervisors are entitled to compensation for attending committee meetings is increased to 100 days per year for 2025. And be it further resolved that the compensation for all days for service on committees over 30 days in 2025 shall be compensated at the same manner as the first 30 days of committee meetings were compensated, including reimbursement for mileage pursuant to Section 2-71 of the Chippewa County Code of Ordinances, forwarded to the County Board by the Executive Committee.
I will entertain a motion to approve.
Supervisor Gearing so moves.
Bergeron will second.
Okay, question?
All right, thank you, Chair. This one will be real quick. We do this every year. If we don't do this, you can't get paid if you are in more than 30 meetings a year. So why this is a state statute, nobody knows, but we do this every single year. So, but it needs a 2/3 vote to pass.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the vote. Resolution passes. Item 4, new human resources policies, second reading.
All right, so the first, oh, sorry.
We need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Lots will second.
We do have a motion, second.
So the first agenda item is just the 6 new policies. And I think I went through them a little bit last time. This is just a second reading in case there were more questions about any of these 6 new policies.
Okay, any questions?
No.
He's excited over there.
Okay. Supervisor Dubridge.
I'm sorry, I'm getting some of these policies mixed up a little bit. Is this one with the military leave?
No.
That's the next one, okay. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, we'll call the vote. It is approved. Now on to the Human Resources Policy Manual revisions.
So this is all of the
Well,
revisions in the.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I need to have a motion to approve.
I just will make that motion.
Silence will second it.
There's a motion second to approve, so we will discuss.
This is where there's a summary also in your packet that shows you all the different sections that are updated. And this is the one that does have the military leave suggestion. Any questions?
So there's some discussion concerning the military leave, and there's requests to have that taken out and considered separately. So I would entertain a motion. Somebody want to do that to consider item, I think it's item 9, military leave, to consider that separately.
Hennig makes a motion.
Okay, Hennig makes the motion.
Second, Kelly will second.
There's a second. Do you have any further questions to discuss on considering that item separately? Okay.
I would like to.
Then we will. Pardon?
I'd like to speak on that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I'm in the process. I'll wait.
Okay. We'll call the vote when we can get to vote on removing section 9 on military leave to consider separately.
You can have a discussion on it.
Oh.
Or we just.
Yeah, I think there's no more discussion. Well, sorry. Supervisor Schubert.
No, I was reading I thought it was the vote.
Okay.
We all make that.
We're running a little. We're just getting things back. Okay, so I'll call the vote. This is to remove section 9, is to consider it separately. So a yes vote is to consider item 9, section 9 separately, military. Okay. Okay, so we will consider section 9 separately. So let's continue. If there's any further discussion on approving all the other items, revisions, other than section 9, military leave. If there are no further questions, we will call the vote, and your vote will be approving all of the manual revisions with the exception of section 9 that we will consider afterwards as soon as we're done with the vote. If that's clear. Okay. And release. So the manual revisions are approved. As far as the military leave on section 9, I believe a recommendation would be to make a motion to send that back for further evaluation, and after that, then bring it back to the board.
Hennig makes a motion to amend and remove policy number 9, leave military for further review, to be sure that there aren't any conflicts with federal law, then bring it back to the county board for consideration.
Lot seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The removal is redundant because we've removed it already, but the rest of that makes, bring it back, yes. Okay, Supervisor Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just full clarification, this will be sending it back to the executive committee for an additional vote there, or will it be revamped and brought right back to the full board with that? What are we essentially a postponement or a send back to executive committee motion? Just so I'm clear, is all it is. Not.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, just trying to clarify the proper way. I assume if it's being rewritten in a different form, it probably needs to come through the executive committee.
We'll go back to policy committee. Okay.
Can I ask a question for clarification? Is there a direction as to what I'm supposed to revamp? Because this is based on my analysis of the law. And so I don't know what else you would guide me to do unless you have a directive on how to change the language. And I worked with Todd. Todd kind of affirmed my suggestion, so I don't know what I would do other than bring back the exact same recommendation.
What changes need to be done?
Well, I've kind of gotten unclear things as well, so that's why I don't. Yes.
Maybe this for process, if we can have the discussion tonight on what the concerns are, then I think he can bring it back directly to the board, because the board's, it's already gone to exec on the way it's passed now. You can give direction if you want anything changed or if you want the other research done, but I do feel like it can come back directly to the board because you guys have all heard it. So I don't think it really needs to go to the committee. That's my personal opinion. So if you can have the discussion tonight on what your concerns are, and then we could research those and bring them back to the board, I think that would be a good process.
Supervisor Hennig like to say some information on this?
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
I understand you've reviewed this and you feel that you, and I think that Todd agrees with you in some ways, but you feel that you're correct in removing some benefits from a deployed member of the military. If I understand that correctly.
I'm making a recommendation to follow the law's recommendation through you, Sarah, to
What are you
mirror
reading
that.
for the deployed?
The way that it reads, it's confusing and it sounds and appears like we're giving an employee who is currently an employee of the county and they are deployed a benefit for the entire deployment.
Okay.
And so ERISA requires them to have a benefit through 30 days of employment, and then they're offered COBRA for 24 months. And that's what I'm recommending, is that we follow the USERRA.
According to Senator Baldwin's office, when activated, your employer must continue to accrue benefits as if he were still working full-time. Employers cannot discriminate against employees due to their military service, including National Guard activation when it comes to employment benefits. And there's a whole lot more in this ERISA. And it, basically what the federal law is saying is that you cannot take any benefits away while he's deployed, and that he continues to accrue benefits while he's serving. That's what the law says. Now, what you're trying to do is take even a little tiny benefit away when the law says you can't take anything away. And I suggest that we send it back to the Executive Council to get further explanations from higher sources like Senator Baldwin. I also contacted Van Orden's office, who basically said the same thing, is that you can't take away benefits while they're deployed, and that they continue to accrue the benefits that they already have. Because there's some confusion, I just think it's worth waiting not to make a mistake and to do a little bit further study. And that's my opinion on it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I try to do the vetting. I try to give the best information I could to the county. I don't want this. And what happens is if you do make a mistake, ma'am, the federal government gets involved. Department of Labor gets involved. And these dogs don't die. They dig and they dig and they dig. I've been involved in federal lawsuits in other areas. And the Department of Labor has hound dogs that will ferret out things. You really got to be on good, 100% solid, rock solid ground to do anything. And there's consequences for doing it. And I just think a small delay in time to just make sure we're clear that we can do this without harming the vet or breaking the law is not a bad thing. Because you get the federal government, Department of Labor, nothing good happens from that, nothing. That's all I'm suggesting.
Let's have a response here from our Counsel?
Yeah, and I've reviewed the language that Ms. Holfelder proposed, and I found it to be completely in compliance with USERA. You talk about diminishing benefits and you need to allow these individuals to continue to accrue their benefits. We're talking about health insurance here.
Which
And
is
is
a benefit.
right, which is a benefit, right? When we're talking about accrual, I think we're talking about the other benefits that they accrue, which is vacation, those types of things. In terms of specifically health insurance, what she is proposing is in strict compliance with the law. So there are no benefits that are being taken away in that regard.
If you're right, sir, the county will not lose. If you're wrong, the county's gonna lose. There's consequences for doing this, and I don't, this county does a great job. I'm so impressed every day at what happens in this county. I, myself and other people personally went around this year and thanked every office for the great job they do. This board supported that. You're doing a good job. I gave this to you so that you can look at it, and I just want to make damn sure
I think
I'm not going to get in trouble.
I think from what I understand, I think the more accurate question here is more of a question of policy for the board, whether the board wishes to provide more of a benefit than is actually required by law in this case.
I just want to obey the law. I don't want to get the Department of Labor involved. Nothing good happens to that. It tarnishes reputations and everything else. If you're absolutely sure, then there's no consequences, then there's no consequences. I'm not absolutely convinced.
Supervisor Heddick, I really did vet and look even further because this was a month ago, and so I've had some time. I actually sent an email across the state to all the other HR directors. I didn't get 100% response, but all but 2 counties have the exact policy that we have. And
Did you send a law to did you send a request to the Department of Defense to explain it?
I did not do that.
Did you send a request to the State National Guard asking their lawyer to explain it to you? Asking other HR people is good process.
I read the law though, and I know the law. And I was trained on the law, so that's what I brought, and I think that's what Todd was bringing.
Myself, I personally would have checked with the Department of Defense or state, but I don't see it that way. I see you're taking the benefit of it.
Well, according to the handout that we got here under medical insurance from the USERA website, right? So we have to be able to provide them the health insurance. How we can require them to pay for it. If I remember right, in your wording, it sounded like it was just drugs.
No.
Is there wording there that they can continue to pay for it on their own?
Yep. It says that specifically.
Health insurance.
It says that specifically up there.
Oh, it does say that?
Yep. In a period of coverage available under USERA shall run concurrently with a COBRA period available to the employee and eligible dependents and shall not cost more than 102% of the full premium. So
You got it.
Yep.
That's where, just reading your wording, it sounded like it was more dropping. So as long as that is part of it.
Yep.
And then it kind of answers that.
Again, ma'am, I would like to ask. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few pretty quick questions. How often do we experience this?
It's the 3rd time in 10 years.
Third time in 10 years. Are there any negative consequences to leaving it in place as is to make those benefits available as an option? What would be the argument against leaving it as is?
There's a cost, and it's, so the individual, how this got brought up, is the first, so of the 3, is the first time somebody decided that they were going to keep insurance because they wanted the HRA dollars. So if you remember when we brought the HRA, for 2025, we give $500 per quarter up to up to $2,000 for a year in a family. And so he was very thorough and read, and he was missing that. He did not need health insurance because he has trifecta. And so trifecta is offered to him when he went abroad. And so once we realized, and when Joanna in my office came and told me, I said, well, why? I didn't even catch that our policy allowed it because no one's ever asked for it before. Because when you sometimes have two insurance plans, it causes a lot of problems. And so if anybody's had that, you just have a mess. And so it's usually not been something that they've been interested in having in the past.
So 3 times in a sizable time period, and only one of those instances where this came into play. So we can safely call this an outlier type situation. So is there anything wrong with leaving it in place because it offers more flexibility and from a recruitment of these part-time military folks, or creating a benefit for serving and working for Chippewa County?
So this last candidate started with us 2 months prior to going off leave. So I think that's the other factor is, do we want to attract people who know they're going to be sent abroad so that they can get a benefit of $2,000 towards their HRA dollars? And what if he doesn't come back? He still gets entitlement to that $2,000. And of the 3 people that have been abroad, or the 2 prior, 1 didn't return, and he would get all of those dollars. So it's just my recommendation to protect the county with our resources to employees. I mean, I think I shared this before. My son's abroad. He is serving in the military. He has trifecta. He quit his job before he left, and he'll find a job when he comes back. But he could have been entitled to a job, but he didn't need the benefits. But
Thank you. And just knowing that, I think from my perspective, knowing that it $2,000 and $126 million budget, and it's a benefit to those serving abroad for our country, I have no problem with it staying as is. I don't think this needs to be as complicated as it is. It's an outlier situation. And my 2 cents. Thank you.
Again, I get back to the part of the law that says you can't take any benefits away. And you both know far more about this than I do, but it seems like you're taking a benefit away. And I just think more time to reach out to DOD and the State Department of Defense to ask about that particular benefit is, you're talking 30 days to let the executive committee reevaluate it and ask those questions about that benefit. I don't think we have to rush to make a decision on this, especially seeing that, we don't have to, 30 days or whatever it takes to get a direct answer from DOD on its particular benefit. Makes sense to me.
Tony, can you just explain that HRA account and how it works and how they can just cash it out? Isn't it supposed to be used for health or?
Yep. So when somebody leaves the organization, so if somebody's been with the county for several years, they accrue that balance. If they've never turned in medical receipts, they own it. They still own that account, is the way our policy is drafted. You might not, it's not common to have a policy like this, so it is a very, very, very good benefit because they get to take it with them when they leave the organization. But it's still for medical benefits.
When they're stay with the county, then.
Nope, after they leave.
But when you're with the county, the people, or every 2,000, but you can use it for health while you're with the county?
You can use it for to get reimbursed for medical expenses that are out of your pocket, whether you're with the county or if you terminate your employment with the county, so say it's $2,000 you still have in that account, it still belongs to you to use for medical benefits. 2 years from now or 5 years from now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has there been any federal law or suit, I should say, that gives us other insight into this? Has it been contested ever in our country that you're aware of?
I haven't researched in terms of case law
Okay, I'm just
interpreting the federal law.
curious,
Have not.
that would have some implications. And then one of the concerns that I have, given the presentation that we had about workforce, and thank you, Tony, I understand your intention and I appreciate that. Then there's the other side, and I know that we've had some that haven't returned back, but that's the gamble we take, and certainly in today's workforce. But given the forward analytics presentation on our demographics, one of the concerns that I also have is reputation of us as being a good employer. And I get where we may be saying, do we want to take that risk? As an employer of people, it may be something that we do take that risk with the hope that they would stay with us, come back, return, that type of thing, and also caring for the family, which brings me to my last point, that as a nurse, one of the concerns that I have is that if there is a disruption in going to the VA benefit, if you have a child with special needs or a loved one, other kinds of pretty significant needs, it may be of need and benefit because you have only those specialists that knows that child or that person quite well, and you may have such a disruption. And we all know what's happened here in Chippewa Valley with the HS Prevea and St. Joe's closure, and what that can do for healthcare in of itself. So that would be my human concern as a nurse of, I can't predict what that might look like for a family, and especially someone who is called to service.
The HSA account, is that purely employee funded or do you match it?
It's a HRA account, health reimbursement, and it's only employer funded. There's no.
Okay, I was thinking the SJ, okay, HR.
Supervisor Hennick.
Again, I'd like to say a rush to judgment's not good business right now. Reputation-wise, benefit-wise, it sounds like this is a benefit to me. And I suspect DOD would difference. Now, I am not even in the galaxy compared to corporate counsel or yourself. But I think a rush to judgment is inappropriate. That we should give it an extra swing at the bat to just double check on that benefit with some authoritative resource outside of our county.
So I think really you guys are kind of going into the discussion of if this is a benefit to keep or not keep, not if it's legal or not. So I think you really should have a vote on that. I think you guys are there, to be honest with you, tonight. So one of the things you can do is make a motion to remove this language and go stay with the original language, and then it'd be over, essentially. Because I think that's what I'm hearing sitting over there. You guys are really kind of torn. You know, you got the legal issue, I get that, but I think you're really torn on, should we keep this as a benefit or not? So that's what I would recommend.
I don't really understand what you meant, Randy.
To keep it the way it was.
Yeah, I'm saying, I don't think you need to have the discussion if it's legal or not. I think the board is really having a discussion of should you keep it as it was, or what's discovered it is legal and you can take it out. I think this board's still going to keep it in anyways, just from what I'm hearing. So I think to kind of cut through all that, you know, maybe have a look at having a motion to just remove don't go with the recommendation, stay with the way it was. And
Clarify, the way it was is 24 months. It's not a year, it's not 90 days, it's 24 months of coverage. So they could be gone for 2 years and we're gonna maintain their coverage. That's longer than anyone I've ever heard of ever, and just so you know, because I think it was intention was to be COBRA, but because of the language, it reads like it's 24 months of continuous coverage.
So what's this HRA thing that you're talking about? That is $2,000.
That would be for a family of 4. They would get $2,000 per year that they would be gone, funded in their HRA.
And you're trying to remove.
And health insurance.
And you're trying to remove that after 30 days.
Right, because they have trifecta, because they already have coverage. But I understand you guys have an opinion, but you just
So they
go ahead.
leave
And
that 2,000.
I just wanted you to be clear that it was 24 months, that's all.
You're still talking about a benefit being taken away.
Supervisor Kelly.
Administrator Schultz pretty much answered what I was going to ask. Just could remove the recommendations and go back to the way that it was. I'd like to make a motion.
Point of order, I think we have a motion on the floor to send back. I think we need to vote that
Yeah.
either up or down before we
Oh.
entertain another motion. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't.
Get the motion on the floor is to send this back.
Do you want to vote on that?
Okay.
So if they're,
Motion to amend and remove policy number 9.
So if we vote a yes for this, we're sending it back to the executive committee, right? Please explain.
The amendment was to send it for further review and bring it back here to the county board.
and I don't know if I need to relinquish the chair to make comments again, but that's precedent. Legally, it's not, but precedent it kind of is. But presently, if you read the motion is to further review to be sure there are no conflicts with federal law. Personally, I believe between our core counsel and our HR person, they reviewed the federal law multiple times. And I believe if that's the only thing, it seems like it meets federal law, whether it's the other requirements or not. It does. The motion says to go, and that's the purpose of this motion, which seems like after the discussion, it's a moot point.
Well, from my opinion, if they haven't contacted DOD or state, they haven't reviewed the law enough.
Well, then we have no confidence in core counsel or our HR director for their due diligence for months of work.
I think it's just a misinterpretation. And I don't think throwing someone under the bus is appropriate.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Supervisor Burke.
So just a point of clarification then. So we're going to vote on this. If we vote this down, it comes back because we still need a decision on the main policy.
So no decision on this thing. If we vote this down,
on the main policy, and we'd vote that up or down after we take this vote.
if we vote this down, there's no action being taken now. We still have to vote on what action.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yes. So if there's no further discussion right now, we will take a vote for this particular motion. Again, approving the motion will send, like it says, if we don't approve the motion, we continue the discussion on what action we will take. Okay. Okay, release. Okay, 17-2. So action is still on the floor for what action to take. Any continued discussion?
Now,
Or a motion? I guess I will entertain a motion to start the discussion on whatever the motion is.
Well, we have an existing motion on
We have no
this or not, correct?
we have no existing motion.
Because we separated it out.
Okay,
We separated this, we separated, this. We've already approved the rest.
now Supervisor Kelly's up.
I would like to make a motion to amend policy 9 back to the original way it was written, without the red marks, I guess.
Supervisor Lot
I'll second the
seconds.
motion.
6 of you. Someone
Karen.
got it.
Pick one. So the motion is to, I guess, discard all the amendments,
Language.
Amend it back.
to keep the,
Put original.
I guess it wouldn't be to amend it to the original, because the original is amended.
Would be to deny the changes.
Yeah. So we have any discussion on this? We get to the right screen.
It's late, Carrie. I need to fix it right now. This isn't the official minutes. I'm tired and sick. I want to go home.
So is there any further discussion on this? I guess if there's no further discussion, we will call a vote then. The vote is to keep the original language. Okay, release. So the motion passes. 15-4. On item 9, we have the 2025 fire warden appointments.
We do these appointments every year. I think it's the same people as every year.
And I believe there's no action.
We need to vote.
Okay.
Need a motion.
We need a motion to approve.
Version, motions to approve fire warden appointments.
Lot seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, we'll call the vote then. Release. Appointments are approved. Item 10 is County Administrator appointment for Traffic Safety Commission.
I just want to make a motion to approve the traffic safety commission appointment.
Lot seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Questions?
I probably should not vote on this one, right, because I'm related to the person.
You make the
I
decision.
just didn't know, I just wanted to ask corporate counsel, make sure, I'll vote.
Yeah, you can make the decision you can or cannot. If you don't vote, then you
I just,
give a reason.
it
That's
wasn't
all.
gonna be something that I wasn't allowed to, but
There's, that's your decision. You can,
Okay.
can or you can't. Okay, we will call the vote then. Release. Appointment is approved. Agenda items for future consideration. Let me know if you have things you can see. Before we adjourn, I'd like to thank everybody for their time here tonight. I'm impressed the questions. Sometimes it seems like it drags on forever, but as I was told a long time ago, there's no such thing as a bad question. The questions are not, all these questions are that you have, they're seeking information, not trying to set anything up to do that. I'm impressed that almost the whole board is involved in questioning. So I thank you for all of your good questions and your interest. And move on to the last item.
Erickson will make a motion to
Lots
adjourn.
will second.
The second to adjourn. One last time to push your buttons. Steve. Okay, release.
For about 30 years.
We are